What's up, guys? It's Dynasty from the Mountaintops. I'm Mickey. We got Jimmy and Jeremy back again here. Jimmy, how you doing today?
Good. I think we can skip the small talk segment because we've already had that small talk segment off the recording.
Yeah, that's true. We only get to see each other about once a week, so this is about it. So we get to talk.
Yeah.
So, real quick rundown. Well, first off, I said hi to Jimmy and didn't even say hi to Jeremy. So Jeremy,
that was rude. Hey, you need to work on your manners.
Yeah. That's fine. I guess I'm a regular now.
It is not fine.
I have
It's
to
actually
get
fine.
treated as
Not fine.
Yeah,
I'm no longer the guest. I don't get guest treatment.
Yeah, no way. It's just the three of us now.
I do see who the favorite is.
Unfortunately for you there, Jay. Huh?
I see who the favorite is. You did talk to me first.
That was because you always talk anyway, so...
That's true.
And your seniority. I understand your seniority.
Mm-hmm. There you go. All right, guys. So we got a rundown here today. We got two segments. Both segments are going to be part of Stuck in the Middle, is what we call this segment here. How to handle being in the middle, which we've talked a little bit about, but I really wanted to dive in. And then we're actually going to try something different this time in the second segment. We're going to actually use a team that we feel is stuck in the middle and analyze where they're at and then what we would do to make it back or worse, to how we would maneuver this team if we had it. So first off, how to handle the middle. Jimmy, you always talk about you hate being in the middle, so why don't you lead us off here? I kind of know where you're going, but why don't you lead us off, and if you're in the middle, what are you going to do?
Well, I think a couple things is, do you know you're in the middle? Like, are you stuck in the friend zone? You know, like, that's what I always struggle with is, like, I look at one of my teams that I was doing with early this season where I knew they were young. I had some high-end pieces, but I did not have a team that was ready to compete. So I had to make the decision of, am I good enough? I had to ask myself that, and I was realizing I wasn't at that time. So a couple of things. I'm looking at I don't look at points for. I look at my max points for. So I know in Sleeper, I look at my max points and determine, okay, like how many points am I actually scoring? You know, and as you go through the season, you might start off 4-2, but is it really 4-2, or is it, yeah, you're 4-2, but you're 10th in points, 12th in points? Because the one thing we can never plan for in Dynasty is luck. So are you lucky to be 4-2, or did you earn that 4-2? So that's kind of where I start there first, and then that will kind of make my decision based off points, based off record. I'm looking at teams above me, teams below me, because if I'm stuck in the middle, do I really want to sneak into that 6 seed and lose first round? And redraft, yeah, I want to be in the playoffs because my team's going to be new next year. But in Dynasty, I don't think I want to be just sneaking in with the 10th points, most points scored, with a man lineup, and then guess what? I'm going to be stuck in the middle, and then that's going to really hurt me during draft time and things that I can do in the offseason.
I 100% agree with everything you said. Jeremy, what's your take on this?
I kind of take a different approach. As it's known, I tend to hyper-focus more on players than I do pretty much anything else when it comes to Dynasty. I look at it as, okay, so the situation that this has actually come across is in our league, the golf league that we're in. I realized about week 4 or 5 that it ain't going to cut it. I'm still a few pieces away, but it wasn't necessarily a blow-up team. I really think I did well in the rookie draft, and I got a lot of good pieces. I got some quarterbacks that are hitting. So I was at that juncture where I knew I wasn't going to be able to compete. So I look at my roster, and again, like I said, to lead into what I was saying, I hyper-focus on players. So I tend to start knowing their contract situations, their age, the depth chart in front of them, the depth chart behind them. What kind of aspects is it going to look into next year? So I look at situations of which, is this guy going to be replaced? Is this guy going to be older? Or is this guy going to fall into the crux of some weird free agency contract where they're not going to get paid, primarily running backs? Or is this going to be somebody who's going to be that's going to be helpful for me in the future, even just in the following year? So I focus more on the players themselves as opposed to any of the statistics or the draft focus.
But Jeremy, do you look at anything around you? Like, do you look at your points or teams in the league, like their ranking, where their points are at or their standings? Like, do you look at any of that before you make those decisions?
At this time, I mean, when it comes to making it again for the golf situation, yes, I did look into that because that's what helped me determine, I guess you could say, where I am in regards to competing. But I don't necessarily use that as a driving force or use those numbers as the year progresses. I use it as basically a marking point At the one or two times that I decided to reevaluate the roster and the team after a win, or after a loss, and we go from there. So it's a little bit more situational, but I don't necessarily bank or use it as a crutch. It's just more so, again, like a reference point.
Awesome. So I look at it in three different ways if you're in the middle, okay? So, like, record-wise, you could be in the middle. I use my team in golf as an example. I'm 5-5, but I have the second most points in 3 out of my 5 losses. The player who I played would have beaten every single other person in the entire league. They just went off. So I feel like that team can still get in, limp in at sixth or seventh place, and still make a push. So even though they're 5-5, you still want to move that team forward. Now, if I had a team that was 5-5, but veteran players, probably not getting great points every week, things like that, 6th or 7th in points, things like that, I'm going to tear down. It really matters about where my points are per week, kind of like you were saying, Jim. Where is my team based off of everybody else? And can I make a push in the playoffs to try to squeak in and then make a run? Or is this team kind of just losing to all the other teams regularly that are above me and beating the teams that are worse?
Yeah, I mean, look at your team, Mickey, in golf league. Like, you're in. Like, that's it's kind of crazy how just years happen, because like the top 7 teams are like, you're at 7, and like every other team below you is just trash. So I agree with you. Like, yeah, that's a scenario where you're like, yeah, you have high points, obviously, but like you're going to be in the playoffs, just a matter of how much more you can push your team to get better or ride it out, or hopefully another team experiences an injury so you can kind of move further up. But it's just kind of crazy how that happens from year to year.
Yeah, I mean, there's 3 of us that are really close in record, and I have the most points out of anybody except for the undefeated team.
I mean, you're not going to get the 3rd place because that's 8-2, but like
no, but 4th place is well in range.
Oh yeah, I mean, you have the points over everyone else. So I think that's great. Like, you're looking at
the same record last week.
Yeah, so. Like, I think that's why I like Dynasty, because like Jeremy actually looks more at the micro view, like very small. And like me sound like very similar, where we kind of look more at the macro, like big picture, look at things around us, and that's just there's multiple ways to play Dynasty.
And I do want to lead into, I guess, the purpose of the question. Like, I guess that also kind of plays into the confidence level of the team. For example, if you start off low, but you end up start cooking, then obviously it kind of goes from there. So it's a matter of, obviously, in regards to the confidence, in regards to your own personal feelings toward the players themselves.
That's a great point. How do you feel about the players you have? Are they young? Does it make sense to sell, or does it make sense to keep? Because it's a building a core that you can then move into next year and the year after that. So you don't want to sell off those young guys, but if you're veteran laden and then kind of middle of the road, that's where I'm like, okay, time to tear down.
Completely agree.
So, Jeremy, I wanted to move kind of to a different side here. We all kind of think a little bit differently when it comes to how we're stuck in the middle or anything like that, and how to get around that. What are your reasoning, I guess, for if you are going to go for being a contender? And then what are you looking for as that middle of the road to buy or move forward with to get into that upper echelon of the teams that are in your league?
To me, I know it's not necessarily one for Jim, but I kind of focus more on the depth thing. It's immediately, once I realize that I'm going to be able to compete, I look at what kind of cheap pieces that I could add. I don't necessarily ever want to blow up the farm or blow up anything in regards to trying to compete. It's kind of try to do as much as I can with what little assets I can. I don't necessarily want to mortgage the future when it comes to type of competing. But I do immediately like to see what kind of pieces I need to have in place and what kind of depth options that I can fit in. Because if I'm in a situation where I'm in the middle of the pack, I don't necessarily have either the greatest depth or the most elite players. So I'm going to try to do anything I can to try to acquire as many points as I can before the craziness happens. I do a lot what I can at this time of the, or a little bit about 2-3 weeks ago is kind of when I do it, because I try to get it ahead of the game in regards to the trade deadline and the absorbent prices that happen.
That's a great point, is get ahead of the trade deadline, because prices skyrocket right now, because this is the last chance you got.
Correct.
So that's a really good point. Jimmy, what about you?
Kind of the same. I don't know if I would play any different than how I play. I'm just looking for value. If I feel like I can still accrue value and get points, like I'm just trying to find points. Like I think I'm, especially when I'm middle of the pack and I'm trying to maybe make a jump up. I'm trying to, and maybe I have some question marks about my team, and maybe I have a lot of younger players who are maybe underperforming, but I believe in them. Maybe I'm just trying to cry. Like I know early, like before the season, I bought Adam Thielen for a fourth, like cheap. I know he fell off a cliff last year, but for the first few weeks, like he was really good. So if he's gonna keep getting those 10, 12 targets, like that's a cheap starter for me. So I'm trying to find just cheap points, and then when I think I'm ready to make that jump, ready to move, then I'll go swinging for the fences. But I think I just need to collect that data first and make an informed decision. But like I said, I'm looking at macro view of everything around me, and then from there, that will inform my decision if I'm making small moves to maybe get some wins. But either way, I'm looking week to week. Like, what can this player do for me this week? If I need a running back, okay, I'll go buy a third, get a spot start. Like, those are the type of moves I'm probably making. And then once I feel very secure, then I'll bring out the hammer first round picks and then go buy something real nice later on.
No, that's another good point there. If you think you're going to compete, the running back is probably where you need help, right? Mm-hmm. That's typically where the difference lies because quarterbacks are. I think quarterbacks are a little overvalued in two quarterback or super flex. Paying premium, no tight ends really playing all that well this year, except for maybe three. So if you got those, you have a little bit of a premium there. Wide receivers are a dime a dozen, it seems like this year, to be honest with you. No one's really standing head and shoulders above except for one, Jamar Chase, really. He's the one who can drop that 30, 40, 50-point game anytime. It seems like he's the only one who's really doing that this year. So what I focus on is if I am going to go, I'm getting running. And I'm going to grab as many as I can because even if I don't make the playoffs, I can then sell them in the offseason because everyone needs running back. And the running backs have been studs this year. So I think what we've kind of established is if we're actually in the middle point, max points or points for, anything like that, and not getting unlucky, we're probably tearing down and restarting anyway with the young players that we have. Jeremy, you're a little bit more along the lines of finding the right players to maneuver if you need to. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it sounds dead on. Yeah, because like I said, I try to do everything pre-trade deadline. So I've already made my decision really what I'm going to do with my team by week 4 to 6, especially in a dynasty format. Because if I'm going to do any type of trades at that point, if I'm competing, if I'm middle of the pack or I'm lower, I'm immediately thinking in next year. So any type of trade I do, no matter what, I think of next year. That's probably the only really thing I look so far ahead in the dynasty is how is this going to impact me for next year. That's why I target the younger players who I know are going to have a move up and focus if I'm going to do anything super cheap, that's where I can cash in the order. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I think we talked about this a little bit before, and you brought up a good point. This year and then next year. That's kind of, I think, where Dynasty is right now. You played for 2 years is how I look at it. If you think you can win this year, you're focused on this year because get the money when you know you can, right? But then moving forward, if you're not so sure or your team is a freight train, focus on next year too. Because some of those veteran players that you have might move on, become Tyreek Hill, things like that. Like, just not be themselves like they used to be. And that's one thing that I definitely take from what you're saying is focus on, if you're not so much winning a championship this year, focus on next year right away. Jim, you have anything to add?
No, I think just going the other way, like if you are stuck in the middle and you feel like I 4-2, but I have the 10th most points and stuff like that, like get points off your team. Like, and I think it's okay to drop a player. Like you might like a player. Like I think of like Coker from Carolina. His name comes to piece. Like he's going to get you some points every week. You may believe in him, but if you can't trade him, you're better off just getting those points off your team and opening that roster spot for a backup quarterback, someone that may gain value later on, but it's not going to give you any points. So I think that's always the sneaky part is, yeah, like you're not going to make the playoffs or you don't want to sneak in, so you kind of want to tear it down. But earlier you recognize that the better, because like if you're realizing now, it's probably already too late because you can't get to the bottom. Like still having the 104 or 105 when your team was bad from the get-go is not going to do you any favors.
And I think that's where you and I are different, Jim, because like I said, for the golf league, like I'm looking already at these players for next year. I'm looking at the Cokers. I'm looking at the Tracys. I'm looking at the Guerreros in San Francisco. I'm looking at these dudes and I'm wanting to keep these guys because I'm looking at them and I'm taking my risk and gamble in my lottery, which is ultimately the fun part for me on it. So that's where I'm at. So I kind of focus on those players as opposed to dumping them for a backup.
Well, and it goes back to what Mickey, you and I've talked about, and this is something I hope we do a segment on later, is what is a roster spot worth? Like, so Jeremy's keeping backup, these third, fourth string wide receivers, the third string running back that he hopes turns into something where I'm holding backup quarterbacks and I'm getting value quicker and then opening up another roster spot.
How many quarterbacks have you traded in golf, though? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, you're holding all these backup quarterbacks. You've only moved about 3, and one of them was a starter. So, like, I don't know the difference of what you're holding with the backup quarterbacks with the exception of points for on the bench versus what you're doing now, because now next year you're going to be looking for these pieces where I could be already ahead. Let's say Jalen Coker is, say, the next T. Higgins, for example. He's a great number 2 to Leggett or anything like that. I already have him, as opposed to now I'm looking around and trading all those picks or trying to trade those picks for particular players.
Yes, but at the end of the day, Jared Coker, what could you get for him? Like, that's the thing, is like, what would he have to do to trade him for value? Yes, I have not been able to trade quarterbacks as much as I thought. The reality is that 7 teams are just not in it. So that has limited my teams I could trade with. And there just hasn't been enough injuries. So, like, my plan has not worked to my complete, big picture idea. But guess what? There's still going to be backups next year versus, like, you're holding on the guys that you hope, where, like...
You're holding on the guys that you hope. You're holding on the guys that you hope are backups that are filling in due to injury. So you were
but I still believe that they'll be easier to trade than a wide receiver that's sitting in the 50th, 60th ranking. Like...
For now. I'm like, and I'm already focused on next year in golf. I started focusing on next year in week 4.
Yeah, but I'd be curious. I don't know. Just like that's the debate: is what is a roster spot worth? Is it worth keeping a third string running back or a tight end that has late draft capital versus the backup quarterback who, in a 14-team league where more people are trying, which I'm hoping next year maybe that will be the case, I'll have more buyers. I just don't have the buyers this year.
Well, not only that, but there hasn't been nearly the injuries, injuries. That happened like did last year. I think there was like 3 quarterbacks who played the whole year.
And the injuries that, like, Trevor Lawrence is on a team that is not competing.
And it's Mac Jones. Everyone's seen it. No one wants it.
Yeah, but you're not moving Mac Jones, are you?
Well, not yet.
Saying.
But I also need, like, the teams that at the top have not had the quarterback issues that I'm expecting. That still may happen. Like, so I can trade all the way to the finals.
Which makes sense. I guess what I'm looking at it is now, if I'm already shot this year, me looking into next year, it seems to me a little bit more promising to have these potential pieces as opposed to just the pick. So I guess that's where it's at. Like, you're right. That's where the debate is. It's basically comes down to the preference.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, number 1 has 2 quarterbacks. Number 2 has 2 quarterbacks. Number 3, he has 2 quarterbacks that haven't got hurt. Like, I traded one with the 4 seed. Mickey hasn't needed one yet. Kong lost Dak, but he's still got Gardner Minshew. Like, Carson, like, they haven't, like, the wrong teams have had the quarterback issues. That's where I've got unlucky. That's part of dynasty that we can't control. Like, the teams that have needed quarterbacks either just didn't do anything with their roster, or they just haven't made the trade, or they're already out of it. So why would they trade for a backup quarterback when they're 3-7? That's been the part of the issue that I was not expecting 7 teams to only be competing for the playoffs this year.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And one of those teams, I don't even think he wants to be in the playoffs. He was trying to give me Josh Allen, but didn't work out. So,
which I still would have taken.
Yeah, no, we can talk about that trade if we have time tonight or another day. So I want to kind of move on to the next segment here. Talk about the team breakdown. We're going to see if this works. Completely new idea here. So it's someone from our Denver versus Pittsburgh league.
So 12 teams start 12.
12 teams start 12 now. When he won the championship the inaugural year, it was start 10. Let's not forget that. And we had defensive kickers at that point as well. First year he was a champ, went on a run. He was 7-7 that year. All 3 years so far in this league, he's 500. And currently he's 500 in the league as well, in 6th place. And in 2023, he was 7-7 and missed the playoffs. He was the seventh team. So you want to talk about stuck in the middle. This is the perfect example of a team that is stuck in the middle, but was able to go on a little bit of a run originally to make something happen. And his team's not bad. I mean, he has Josh Allen. He has Drake London. He has James Conner. Trey McBride.
Kenneth Walker.
There you go. That's the one I was trying to think of. Kenneth Walker. Like, there are pieces there. Veteran, right in the middle of their career, or young guys who are up and coming. So, Jimmy, since you kind of know the team a little bit better, let's hear your analysis, his strengths, weaknesses, things like that.
Yeah, if I was him, I probably would go for it. Like, I think I'm stuck in the middle, but like if you look at his max points for, he's fourth, he's fifth, but I think he's only a point behind the fourth guy. He's got all his draft capital. Honestly, when I saw his team, I thought back to something we talked about a few weeks ago on the show, which is, like he played Monopoly and there was an auction for one of the properties and he didn't buy. When you have all three of your future first and your team is only one or two starters away, like what cost him is his inaction. I mean, when you have, like, I agree with you, you have all these guys in your prime, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, like I probably would upgrade quarterback two probably a little bit, but when you have James Conner and Kenneth Walker as your starting running backs, which is fantastic, you have Drake London. I mean, that's where he's definitely weak is his wide receivers, and guess what was on the market? A.J. Brown and C.D. Lamb. Trey McBride is a huge, bonus there. He just doesn't have the receivers. If you would have added those two players to his team, you could have made the case that he may have been arguably the best team in the league.
Well, he did have Stephon Diggs as well, who got hurt. So,
yes, smaller piece, but like that's where I think this is a perfect. I hope he listens to this show because I think that's where he was stuck in the middle, but he had really good points and hasn't made a trade. And has it moved the pieces? I mean, you're wasting Josh Allen in his prime. Like, if I had Josh Allen, I would never want to waste a year. I would make sure that I would do everything I can just to, give myself pieces. That first would have been off my team. Same with probably 26 as well. I would have been spending some pieces to buy some receivers, and I think I would have been feeling very confident going into the playoffs because most teams, like, I don't have the running backs that can compete with him. But most teams don't. He's got two really strong running backs and some depth there, but his receivers is what's going to cost him in the end.
Yeah, Jeremy, how about you? What's your thought process here? Strengths, things like that.
I think Jimmy nailed it. I think he nailed it on the head.
You agree?
Yeah, no, I don't. I obviously am not involved in this league, so I don't know the skeleton behind it. But I think he nailed it on the head. With the caliber of players that he has that are quote vets, they're still point-producing machines like the James Connors. So, like, I'm with Jim on this one, especially because he hasn't got himself in any type of predicament with the draft capital. He's not he's not overabundance where, he's sitting on a bunch of picks, but he's also doing rather well. I agree with Jim. I don't know if I'd have gone into 2027, but I 100% would have dumped 2025 and 2026 picks on anything I could. Utilizing what you have. That his team's not necessarily falling apart. He doesn't have necessarily all vets, like bench cloggers and guys who are not going to give him any value, that they're just going to retire on his bench until he drops them. I think he's in a good spot here. I really do.
But I think that's where, like, I think people forget is, like, that's when you're stuck in the middle. You keep thinking, oh man, one more draft pick. If I keep that first, then I'm going to hit on this great player, and that's all my team is missing. But the reality is when you keep adding one questionable asset to your team every year, I say questionable because you don't know how they're going to turn out. You don't know if they're going to hit. And then, what do? You age out Josh Allen. And Drake London gets an injury. James Conner is aging out. Like, Trey McBride has an injury. Like, a lot of things have gone right for him this year. Like, I look at his bench, and he's not lost one big player. I mean, I don't consider Stephon Diggs a big player. I mean,
I agree.
Wide receiver 17, so, maybe, but, I don't know, he's average, but, like, I don't know, like, the fantasy gods have blessed him with, the injury button kind of turned off, and, 107 with this team is not going to change your path either way, but I guarantee if you were to package that 25 first, 26 first together, and, maybe he needed to outbid me. I don't know if I probably would have gone for those two players no matter what, but you add an A.J. Brown to this team with Drake London, with Trey McBride, I don't know. I feel really good about that team going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. He's in a situation, like I said, the situation, not just the injury bug has avoided him, but again, the draft capital is there. So there's individuals in this league, I guarantee it, that are just like you, Jim, who are foaming at the bit for those picks. The time of the strike is now. I think you worded it perfectly that the inactivity is what hurt him presently. He still has time. I mean, I'm assuming the deadline is still in play. He still has time to act. But to your point, it depends on who's available at this point.
There's no deadline in this league. So he can still act however he wants. And I think the draft pick is a good piece to bring up here because he is the 16th. Like, I don't see another team that's close to him.
Honestly, well, it's the Roundtree team. He's, I think, a game behind him.
Now that CMC's back, he might have a chance. But,
yeah,
when you look at the rosters throughout the league, there's those 4 big ones. There's one that's just under them. And then there's Corey and maybe Josh.
And that's the tricky part, too. And that's the part I wanted to talk about as well, is that just because you can go for it, should you? Like, I think that's an interesting conversation. Like, I agree with you, Mickey. Like, our league is very top-heavy. So, like...
the top 4 teams are insane. Close to 200 points every single week. Insane.
So that's the reality of his world is... But here's the issue. Once again, you're stuck in the middle. If you're not going to go for it, if you're realizing these top 4 teams are just too good, adding one more receiver, like, no fringe players is going to change his direction. So it's either I'm going big. I know he did post about maybe London will be available possibly, but like James Conner should be off his team then if you're not going to make a move. Travis Etienne should be off his team.
If you're selling Drake London,
Jonathan
should be.
Everything else is going with it.
Yeah, like, 100%. Yeah, you should be. If he's unloading, he's unloading. And again, this is my play. If it's the next year thing, James Conner, I have no idea what kind of health he's going to be in a situation. Gone. Etienne, I have no idea what's next year. Gone. Anybody that I can't see in any type of emotional or physical value or any type of whatsoever in regards to points, gone.
But here's the issue, guys. It's already too late. Like, if he wants to sell, it's too late. He's stuck.
Oh, presently, yes. With this particular issue,
because
100%.
The reality is
why I looked into it
outside of Drake London, which he's underperformed the last couple of years. Like, I was expecting better things with having finally a comparable quarterback.
Agreed.
And he has played well.
Performed. Like, he's disappointed. Like, let's be honest, where they drafted him, he's disappointed. Just like Kyle Pitts, just like Bijan Robinson, that whole offense. He's finally put it together this year.
Right.
But everyone else you knew what you were going into the season with. You knew what you were going to get out of James Conner. Travis Etienne, I'd say he was starting to tail off a little bit last year. But Kenneth Walker, Trey McBride, you kind of knew where your team was going into it with we had high-end teams. Yes, I added to that mix. But, like, it's already too late. Like, if you weren't going to go for it from week 1, then you should have been selling week 1. It doesn't matter, like, how many wins you put together or points. Like, this team was solid. If you needed to make the decision before the season started, am I ready or not? Like, my team, I wasn't sure, and that inaction cost me potentially the bye. I should have gone for it earlier because I should have realized no matter what I do, my team's going to be stuck in the middle. I might as well go for it. And that inaction is going to cost me possibly a bye week and possibly a first-round exit now. My team is still great, and I can still win it all, and I expect to, but that inaction cost me seeding. His inaction is all the first that could have been spent. Like, I would have went after Drake London. I would have went after James Conner. I still might, but the market is a little bit maybe smaller now because there's less teams competing. And on top of that, he has so many points that no matter what he does now, he's stuck in the 105, 106, 107. And guess what? That's not going to help his team regardless.
No, that's a great point. I guess moving forward, I always look at his team, and he has Josh Allen, which means he's going to have points on his team regardless. And I would not move him because you have a decade of top 3 to at worst 5, in my opinion, fantasy value. Still there.
Well, let me ask you this, Mickey. Would you sell or would you go for it?
Obviously, we're in this league, so I know the league well. There's 4 teams that, like I said, it might not be 200 a week, but it's 170 a week that these teams are putting up minimum.
He doesn't have
Has this happened from the beginning of the year? Has that happened from the beginning of the year?
This roster.
Jeremy, we'll be honest. There was 2 Mickey's team and Kong's team we knew would be really good. We had one surprise team that is still doing it.
He thought during the bye weeks he was going to fall off, and he hasn't, which kudos to him. But his veteran running backs have just.
Well, and I also traded him a quarterback out of spite to screw over a different team, and that didn't work out for me.
No, it hurt everybody else except for that team. Thanks for that.
Yeah, I made a spite trade. It felt really good.
I would have sold week 4, honestly. Like I handled myself in golf. I would have sold week 4.
But let me ask you this, Jeremy. What would have 3 weeks have done? Like, what? Why wait 4 weeks? Like, nothing in that 3 weeks
I would have seen. Because like,
what though? Like, you knew what this team was.
I'm trying to answer you, but you interrupted me.
Good, because I'm. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh my god!
I like it. Go ahead.
Do I have the floor?
I don't know. Is your microphone still working, or is that issue again?
Jimmy, let him talk. Come on.
I don't even know what we were talking about now.
You would have taken this team and sold in week 4.
Yes. Okay. So what I would have seen was, that's why I was asking, if these 3 or 4 teams were producing 175 to 200 points a week on a consistent basis, that would have been my thing. Anybody can hit 170 in a week. I had Burrow and Chase last week. I woke up Friday morning to 95 points. Like, so that can happen every week. I need to see consistency. If I'm seeing the Jim and the Mickey teams consistently blow out 175, 180, and I can barely muster 140, that's when I'm unveiling. But I need to see first. I'm not going to abort mission week 1 because I had a bad week. I need to see if I'm competing. I need to see where I'm at.
And that's where I'm differing, is that I would have had a plan before the season even started. Like, I think that's where it's like knowing your league, knowing your team, knowing where you're at. Like, inaction will only hurt you down the road. Like I said, I did not make a decision. I wanted to wait and see, and I regret that now. I'd be really curious where his mindset is. Does he regret it? What would he have done differently? But yeah, I mean, you could have kept Josh Allen, you could have kept Drake London and McBride, but like I would have maybe sold those running backs, and if I'm overperforming, great, I can go buy more running backs.
Yeah, I'm dumping the running backs. Yeah, immediately. That's the first thing I'm doing is dumping backs.
Yeah, and I think.
But when you don't have the depth and you have draft picks, that's where, like, if I was him, that's where I would have the regret. I have the draft picks, and I have the regret there, not spending them.
100%.
And the last thing I'll say before we have to go here is I think because he's done it before and won in the 5th spot, he's like, oh, well, maybe I can do it again. And that might be why he didn't sell at the beginning, because you never know what this team is.
Yeah, but also that was year 1 when no teams they don't know where they're at yet. Like,
right.
We know where we're at now.
Yes. No, that's a great point. Unfortunately, we're under the gun. We got to go. But for Jimmy and Jeremy, I'm Mickey. This has been Dynasty from the Mountaintops. Have a good night.
See you guys.
See ya.